Hello, everybody. Artistry and Finesse with you. Game 3 in the books. The Penguins with a huge come-from-behind victory finesse. This was a game where you could feel negativity just bursting through Twitter, bursting through your phone from your friends' text messages, where you just felt like the Penguins are about to succumb, and they just refused to do it. I mean, I can't say enough about how big of a win this was.
Yeah, I'm really ecstatic about this one. Mostly because of, just coming back in general was big for how bad they played and overcoming just two terrible goals from Fleury early. Never really losing their discipline. I thought completely outplaying Columbus the whole game. By merit, this should have been a 4-1 win for the Pens.
They're far superior. I mean, we knew that going into the series. They're a better team. It's a very flawed team. A lot of what people are saying in criticism of this team has some truth in it. I mean, there are definite flaws. We've recognized them all season long. All season long, we've been talking about how Fleury, has a tendency to be shaking the playoffs. That's no secret. There's no depth among the forwards. Letang and Malkin and Neal are undisciplined. All those things remain true. But, that tends to blind people in the moment. The playoffs, it's so emotional. People, they're only as good as the last minute of the game. If the last minute of the game has gone poorly, people completely panic and go off the deep end.
Yeah, I mean, the Pens, like I said, should have won this game big. And the most encouraging thing to me, and this is sort of the one thing that's a little bit of a surprise, is getting the secondary scoring. There's a couple ways to spin this. You could look at Crosby getting no points this game and be like, oh, Crosby's not stepping up, he's not playing well. Or you could look at it that the Pens are trying to win a series, and Crosby's had two, mediocre games for his standards, but his teammates have picked him up, and now they're getting him more games. They're scoring. Sutter has 2 goals. Mata scored tonight. Stempniak buried one. That's huge. That's how you're supposed to win in the playoffs. There's no rule that says your best players have to score 2-3 points every game. This is how you should win playoff games. You should be a team that's good enough to have secondary guys carry you every once in a while. And I'm just so. Orpik stepped up with a goal. Sutter, Stempniak, it just makes me feel so much better about this team than if we had won this game just scoring 3 power play goals in the third by James Neal and Chris Kunitz. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What a goal by Brooks Orpik. And I want to talk about him. I want to talk about the other positives from this game. But I want to read to you some tweets from our friend Jesse, who is the producer of the movie Goon. We had him on the podcast a while back, and his texts to me are just hilarious. This is from the beginning of the third period. He says, Malkin and Crosby are totally choking. Again, Letang playing is Bilesman's way of offering his resignation. Just doesn't make sense. Team is built so lazily. And here's the coup de grace. Crosby looks totally average. Team should be feeding off him. If you watch Western Conference, Crosby and Malkin would be third liners.
Yeah.
At that point, I said, I love you. Put down your phone, do a shot or something.
Right.
It isn't over. Next second, Stempniak scores the tying goal. But, as over the top as that is, it's pretty representative of, people on Twitter and people watching these games. I mean, it's if there's no instant gratification, people go nuts. I will say this. It is a little bit concerning to me to see Crosby so invisible for long stretches of the game, but you did some research today and found some really interesting statistics, I think, that sort of give some perspective on star players in the playoffs and how their teams do when they're not producing.
Right. Like, you got to look at it this way. They can't score every game. Like, Crosby, I think, has no points in 28 playoff games out of, 84 playoff games. It's 33%. For comparison's sake, Mario, I looked it up, 15% of playoff games he had no points. Yager, 37% of his career playoff games he has no points. So the thing is, sometimes you're just not going to score in the playoffs. You have to have your teammates buy you time so you can get to game 6s, game 7s where you can score big goals. And if he doesn't score big goals then fine, you can slam him. But that's just why I'm so encouraged. I think I'm trying to pull it up right now what some of the other numbers are. Like, Jonathan Toews, I know, didn't do much. He was, I think, 14 of 23 games in the playoffs last year. He didn't have any points. But his team won 6 of those 14 games. Could the Pens win 6 of 14 playoff games with Crosby having no points?
No.
Probably not. So those wins are what enable them to get to the Stanley Cup Final so that he can score a big goal in Game 6, and then he goes down as this, great clutch player. And I think for Bergeron, his team, I think last year I looked it up, in 16 playoff games or something like that, or maybe it was 12, he didn't have a goal or didn't have a point, and his team went 500 in those games. So, and Patrick Kane, career in the playoffs, when he doesn't have a point, the Blackhawks are still over 500. So,
right.
I'm not excusing Crosby. I'm just saying that, it all depends. A lot of it depends on how well their teammates can prop these guys up when they have a bad game, because these guys carry their teammates 67, 70% of the time. You need that other 30% of the time for them to get some breathing room. And I just thought that was big tonight. I didn't think Crosby was that terrible tonight. I thought he was setting some stuff up. I thought Malkin had a great third period. But I just thought overall the Pens never quit. They never gave up. And I think they just realized, look, we're better than Columbus. If we just keep playing the way we're supposed to play, we're going to win this game. That's all we wanted. That's what we wanted in the Flyers series. That's what we wanted against Boston last year. Just keep playing the right way. Eventually, you're going to get some breaks.
Right. I thought Malkin had a tremendous third period. Does it worry you at all that Crosby is sort of failing the eye test right now? It doesn't seem like he's really dominating the puck the way he can. It doesn't seem like he's showing a hunger to shoot the puck. Does that concern you?
A little bit. I mean, yeah, but not that much. I mean, that's low on the list of things that concern me. I would say that the 2 goals Fleury gave up in the first 2 minutes or whatever of the game concerns me significantly more.
Yeah, those were bad.
We've seen this from Crosby. Sometimes Crosby has bad games. He's a star player who can look pretty ordinary at times, and then he'll bounce back. I mean, I remember last year in the Islanders series, he had some pretty bad games, and then he had some other games where he was amazing. And if you want to say he should be more consistent, fine. But I suspect that we will hear from him loudly at some point over the next 3 or 4 games.
Guess how much, this is something Ali C., a friend of the blog, just tweeted. Guess how many minutes Rob Scuderi played tonight? Just guess.
10.5.
13:44.
Yeah, that's low.
You know what? That's what we said today going into the game, that if there's one thing that is absolutely clear, is that he is a third-pairing defenseman, and I'm happy to see that his minutes reflect that tonight. I don't think that's sustainable in the playoffs, because what it means is that our top 4 guys must have played a ton. And I don't have the minutes in front of me.
Yeah,
but that's what he should be playing.
Yeah,
he's going to play.
Look, the long-term concern is that the Pens are going to run some of these guys into the ground. We talked about it in our post. Crosby playing so much in the overtime games, probably unsustainable. Crosby 22-20 tonight. Malkin 21-38. I mean, it's the playoffs. They got to play big minutes, but Paul Martin 28-34. That's a lot of minutes.
Yeah, but none of that is unusual to me. I mean, I'm sure Ryan Suter tonight is playing 30 minutes. I mean, that's just what number 1 defensemen play.
Yeah, for sure. But you look at this is not a criticism of Sutter, because I did think he's been okay in these playoffs, better than in the regular season for sure. He only played 13:35 tonight. That's pretty
Right.
low for your third line center. I mean, you want that guy. You want a guy who can be out there 17, 18 minutes.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. We did have a lot of power plays tonight. I think we had 5 or 6 power plays.
I think 7 actually. One was short, but I think we were 0 for 7 on the power play.
You know, the power play can start clicking at all. I think that my biggest concern right now is we know the Penguins aren't that tough to play against in the defensive zone. What we saw last year against Boston is against certain teams, they're not tough to play against in the offensive zone either. You see our power play or, until the latter half of the game, our guys don't get to the net. It's just not their game. They're particularly Malkin's game is Malkin's line is pretty much a perimeter line. Crosby's line is around the net a little bit more. But it concerns me that on all those power plays, you've got Kunitz in the middle of the ice, but everyone is so spread out.
Yeah, the power play is way too spread out.
Yeah,
really
these real successful teams in the playoffs, like San Jose and Boston, they're collapsing on the other team's net on the power play consistently. And you don't see that.
Even Columbus was all around our net. That's why I think the 2 defenseman idea is a terrible idea for the power play because 2 defensemen are going to play away from the net, and we know Crosby and Malkin don't get as close to the net as we want. So now you got Kunitz all by himself. At least with Neal, you can have a guy in the high slot, and you got 2 guys sort of in the lane from shots from the point. So I'm not going to alter my game plan to try to prevent shorthanded goals. I think when you start doing that, you're playing right into the other team. Like that means their penalty killing has gotten to you.
Yeah.
You've got to just be like, look, here are our 5 best players. We're putting them out there. This is our power play. We're way more likely to score than you are against us.
Yeah.
So I would definitely keep Neal out there on the power play.
Yeah, I have no quarrel with that. I thought Letang was much, much better tonight.
He was shaky early, and obviously took that penalty late, which is just becoming a matter of course for him.
Yeah, that was about, it was he literally hooked his stick around the guy, but he didn't really touch him. It was a poor judgment play by him. Like you can't make that motion, I guess, and expect not to get a penalty, but it wasn't that egregious. I thought James Neal's penalty on the power play was much worse. He's sort of a head case.
How about Columbus, though? They got a little bit of a head case situation. They take a lot of undisciplined penalties.
Yeah,
they took a little bit maybe that's where Biosma learned this from Todd Richards, the undisciplined penalty strategy. But one last comment sort of about the negativity, and then we can get a little more into the nitty-gritty of the game. All of this stuff that people are saying about Biosma not being a good coach or the Pens needing to trade people or waive people or whatever, that may all turn out to be true. I just don't get the urge to rush to make those judgments after the first period of Game 3 in a series.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about.
What's the rush? Maybe Biosma should get fired at the end of the season if the Pens lose the series. I don't know why that has to be written in stone after the first period of Game 3.
This is a function of social media. It didn't used to be this way.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be like you took stock of a team after a series or after the playoffs. People are taking stock of this team after every shift.
Right.
And it's preposterous. And it's easy to get sucked into it. It's, if you do that, if you fall for that, it's just stupid. Because you're going to get proven wrong at least half the time. If you were one of these people that were panicking and saying fire everybody in the first period tonight, guess what? You were wrong because you didn't watch the whole game.
Right.
But
and maybe you turn out to be right, but it's not – you have to take a little bit bigger picture view. If you start reacting every single time, you're just going to look foolish.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine to observe what's happened. People can have a bad period. You can comment on it.
You can say, Letang looked like shit that period. You can say that. But to say Dan Bilesman should have been fired 3 years ago or something that's just not...
Right. Don't draw a conclusion based on the shift you just watched.
Right.
Don't tell me how things are going to play out, for all time.
Right. We'll tell you how things are going to play out. We'll draw conclusions.
We're gonna give you the perspective at the appropriate time. Just be patient and wait for it.
We have to talk though about Fleury, because I did come to the conclusion after the second goal that the Pens should have yanked him from the game. I thought this was going to be a real shit show from Fleury. I was wrong in that, although I will point out that the Penguins did an excellent job of limiting Columbus's chances after those first two goals. The team did what the team is supposed to do, is just rally and help the goalie out. And I thought they really limited this stuff against Fleury. Contrast this with the Flyers series, where Fleury would give up 2 bad goals early and then face an onslaught of like 7 consecutive 3-on-1s.
Yeah.
So I am worried about Fleury. I am no more confident than I've been in him at any point this season, and I haven't been that confident in him. But I was happy to see him turn it around and play better.
I'm a little more confident in it because what we've seen so far this series, I wouldn't call this a trend by any means, but if he starts off shaky, he settles in and he finishes strong. Now, I think a lot of this is a function of us playing an inferior opponent. I think if we were playing a Boston or the Flyers, it might be a much different story. I might be a little bit quicker on the trigger to pull him. But, the bottom line is it's not last year. We really don't have a proven backup in that even though Vokun is active now, he hasn't played. I just don't think you can have that much confidence that you have a solid backup at this point. So I think you're going to live or die with it.
Yeah, I was never really that concerned, even with Bobrovsky playing well, that we were going to get 2-3 goals, because even in the first 10 minutes of the game, it looked like Columbus was dominating because they were up 2-0, but the Pens were playing much better than Columbus and and really controlled play for most of the night, especially in the third period. And you're right. It's an inferior opponent. I guess it's similar to the Islanders. I mean, there's no reason for the Pens to lose this series. Pens are better.
No, I don't think so. I still think our prediction is good. I think Pens in 5 at this point. I don't think we're going to play much worse than you've seen us play so far.
No, although we did say that, I remember after Game 3 against the Islanders last year, and then lost 6-5 in overtime or something in Game 4. So you think you've seen the worst, but it could get worse.
You've seen nothing from Sidney Crosby so far, and Fleury has played badly for stretches. I feel like there's so much more to this team that we haven't seen. I remain very optimistic about the series, and it's possible to feel two things simultaneously, GTOG Nation. You can feel really good about our chances in this series and still recognize that this is a flawed team. It is. But every team is flawed.
Right. We're not taking the breakdown of Shiro's mistakes path right now. We've done that during the season. The focus is on trying to win this series. You got to win this series. And the Pens are still in really good shape to do that.
Let's give some credit to Brooks Orpik right now.
I thought he played great.
We've been very critical of him this season. It wasn't just the goal tonight. I thought he was outstanding defensively.
Yeah, he made some really clever plays along the boards behind his own net. He was good. He was pretty good. He shows that he has some worth. He's not going to melt in big spots. He is hard to play against. He is very physical. He has some qualities. He's not a total loss out there, even when he's not playing that well. And tonight he had a good game.
He was really good. James Neal is a concern to me. We've touched on that, but I also get the sense that Chris Kunitz is not firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I mean, this is a situation. We get to this time of year, and it's very possible that, the day after the season ends, 4 of these guys are going to have surgery on torn abdominal muscles or something.
Right.
So you never know what guys are playing through when they seem just oddly slow in the playoffs. Like, a lot of people's first reaction is just to call them chokers or not clutch or something.
Right.
It's wise to sort of wait and see how some of this stuff plays out.
I would bet that something's wrong with Chris Kunitz. There's something off there.
Yeah, but he's still playing 20 minutes, so he can't be that banged up. No excuses.
Yeah. The fourth line of do you have the minutes in front of you? I still don't have it.
I'm looking at him right now, yeah. It's
I
really bad.
Glass and Adams. Joe Vitale had some moments tonight where he was effective.
Joe Vitale played at least 7 minutes and 11 seconds.
Maybe he had just a lot of energy, but Glass and Adams were I thought, really not out there very much.
Jason Megna played 8:27. Glass played 8:53. Bo Bennett only 9:56. Craig Adams 11:04.
Oof, that's a lot of bad news right there. That's a lot of passengers. If you're playing 10 minutes as a forward in a playoff game, you're a passenger.
Well, that's four guys. That's four guys playing.
Four passengers.
Playing under 10 minutes. One guy playing 11, and your third line center playing 13:30.
What's going on with Bo Bennett?
Bo Bennett is not good in the defensive zone. He's a real liability in his own zone.
Shockingly,
he's got excellent offensive instincts. Offensive instincts.
Although he made a terrible draw pass in the first period when he should have shot the puck.
Bennett and Letang both passed up shots. Like, Letang had that bizarre backhand pass to Crosby when Crosby set him up coming in as the trailer. Yeah,
at least Bennett looks dangerous. It looked like Letang thought he was in the defensive zone.
Crosby had another assist.
3-on-2 rush. Crosby he was like, I better clear this puck to the corner.
Yeah, I don't know what. It's like you try to get in Letang's head, you can't. You can't think that illogically. It's difficult.
Yeah, if you get in Letang's head, you're going to have a frightening experience.
Crosby did get credit for an assist tonight, by the way. So he does have points.
Really?
Yeah, he had second assist on the Stempniak goal. So he does have points in all three games.
Yeah, by accident. He gets points by accident. How bad could the guy be?
Who do you think got the number one star tonight? This is a little bit stunning.
I will say...
There's no way you're going to get it.
Really?
Like, there's just no chance.
Is it a Columbus player?
No, it's a Penguin.
I'll say UC Jokinen, he got the game win.
Oli Mata.
Okay, that would have been my guess if he was credited with the game winner, because I don't think there was anybody else that obvious. But I just saw on Twitter that Jokinen was credited with the game winner. Maybe when they chose the number one star, they still thought it was Mata.
Yeah, that was a bizarre choice, IMO.
Mm-hmm.
There was something else I want to say. Did you watch was there a Root Sports feed, or were you on NBC?
I watched Root. I just couldn't deal with NBC tonight.
Okay. I want to talk about something Pierre Maguire does that I don't think gets enough attention. Everyone talks about how he calls people Maddie and Christopher, and like just does Danny Bilesma, does like pet names. I just need the wall thing. I need to get my phone. I'm asking for my phone charger. But and then he does a thing where he names the schools. He names prep schools in New England, and I think in game one he started naming headmasters by name.
Right.
We're getting down to the point where he's going to talk about teachers and like what this third period English was so and so. But he does this other thing where he was saying about Ryan Johansson in the third period. He's like, now's the time for Ryan Johansson to take over the game. This whole concept of taking over a game as a player in hockey, it doesn't really work that way, does it? It's not like Michael Jordan could just say, all right, I'm going to take the ball now and I'm going to take every single shot. You can't just take over the game. It's not like, all right, now I'm going to start dominating. It just doesn't work that way.
Right. It doesn't work that way. The only person... There are two people... Wow, great goal in that Minnesota game. The only people that it's really worked that way for, in my experience, are Lemieux and Yager. They actually took over games. And I think that's part of what we're dealing with in our Pittsburgh Penguins experience right now, is people who remember those guys have a totally warped view of how this works.
Right.
Because they could take over games. It was a different era. There were different players. They were, in my view, the number one center and winger in the history of hockey. And two of the best athletes of all time. So it's not really realistic to compare anything that goes on now to those guys. People don't really take over games now. Malkin, at times, can take over a game. I don't know that Crosby really can do that. Like, Crosby is incredibly prolific. I mean, he's one of the top scorers in terms of points per game in history. He's incredibly efficient. But taking over a game, no, you're right. It's not like he's coming down the court in a basketball game and he's isolating someone one-on-one and he's going to, like, drive to the hoop.
He should do that.
That's not the way this works.
Why doesn't he do that? Just walk it up. Have everyone else go stand in the four corners and just go one-on-one against somebody.
Yeah, you can't go one-on-one against, Jack Johnson. It's just not the way it works.
It's not Michael Jordan against Brian Russell.
Right. Would I like him to shoot more? Yes, but that's different.
Yeah. Like, it's unrealistic, too, to think that these guys are going to be as prolific when other teams have, like, 18 dudes on their coaching staffs. They got iPads on the bench, like, focused on every single player. The goalies are infinitely better than they were in the 80s and 90s. It's right. Just like it's a different game. You have to look at it a different way, and you need a full roster. You can't. One guy's not going to be routinely scoring 3-4 points in the playoffs. It's just not going to happen.
You want Crosby to score? You better hope that Gimpy, Chris Kunitz is going to do something phenomenal, and Lee Stempniak is going to, like, draw two defenders to him, and feed it to Sid. Like, it's just not that. It's just not that realistic.
Yeah. So you're still confident? Pens in 5?
Yeah, I'm sticking with my prediction. Why wouldn't I? The Penguins have been as disappointing as they could possibly be through the first 3 games in this series, and guess what? They've only lost 1 game.
Right. And that was in double overtime.
Correct.
In a game they had a 2-goal lead. So in
a game they handed to Columbus.
Right. And the Pens were clearly the better team tonight. It's not a special teams win. The Pens were just better. And over 60 minutes it played out as it should, with the Pens winning the game.
Absolutely. This is a total Dennis Green scenario. They are who we thought they were. They're better than Columbus. They're going to beat Columbus. They may make it to the Stanley Cup final. It's going to be difficult.
Right.
It could happen. They're not one of the top 3 teams in hockey, but they're probably one of the top 5 or 6. And you never know. They could do this. You're not entitled to it happening, Penguin fans. Just because you have Crosby and Malkin, you're not entitled to seeing Crosby and Malkin win the Conn Smythe. People have a little bit of a distorted understanding of what is happening. Just try to sit back and enjoy the NHL playoff. I will say this. When we got down tonight and it looked like we were probably going to lose this game, I did start doing docking on my computer.
Do you think retroactively the NHL should rescind Olli Maatta's first star now that Jokinen was credited with the winning goal?
I think Olli Maatta is a terrific young man, and I think he should keep his number 1 star.
See, I would institute, if I was a commissioner, I would institute a Bureau of Review. First of all, I would create a sprawling bureaucracy in the NHL. I would have different bureaus for all different types of things. One of them would be the Bureau of 3 Stars Review. And when you give the first star of a game to an Olli Maatta, who played 15 minutes, he played a fine game, These 15 minutes, he was a -2 and had a wrist shot deflect off like 3 people before it went in. I just don't know that that's. I think with a young player like that, you don't want to give it. It's too much too soon.
That wouldn't happen on your watch. Let me ask you this question. If Olimata played 15 minutes and Rob Scudieri played 13:44 and Paul Martin played 28 or whatever, how much did everybody else play?
Let's see. Niskanen only 18-12. Who's playing all the minutes? 28 for Paul Martin. Orpik 22-36. The Tang 21-05. So
okay. That seems like it doesn't add up. Is there
it seems a little low for. It seems a little low for Niskanen. Only 18-12, considering he's been our best player probably in the playoffs so far.
Matty Niskanen. So you think we were G-chatting about this today? What do you think he's going to get offered in the offseason?
It's going to be over 5. I could see 5.5.
Yeah.
Look. I mean, Paul Martin makes 5, and Niskanen's like 5-6 years younger than Paul Martin.
No question.
So why wouldn't you pay him more than Martin?
Remember that Jeff Finger signing by Toronto? I think I've never heard of him before or since Jeff Finger, and I think he got like a $4.5 million deal from Toronto.
Yeah,
long term. I mean, I think Niskanen easily is going to get an over $5 million offer.
Yeah, I mean, Niskanen certainly benefits offensively. Like his numbers benefit from being on a power play with Crosby and Malkin and these guys. So. Right. I think if you sign him and he goes to some random team, if he goes to like Nashville or Phoenix or some team that doesn't have a lot of offense, they have to adjust their expectations. Like you want to position him as a competent minutes eating guy, kind of like Paul Martin. Like here's a guy who can play 22 minutes a night very competently and ship in 30 to 35 points. But if you think you're getting hybrid Erik Karlsson, Shea Weber, you're probably going to be disappointed.
Might be a little bit let down. That's right.
Yeah. But he's playing well, and I'm encouraged by the Pens tonight. I thought their bounce-back ability was huge. I didn't know that they had it in them, but it was an excellent bounce-back game. Big bounce-back ability. I love it. When's Game 4? Game 4 would be 2 days from now, so that'd be on Wednesday. All right. Well, we'll talk again then. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Go Pens. Until next time. GTOG. Get to